More the Rich podcast. Today I'm here with Kentarou Sajek. Sajek is such a cool name. Is a seasoned operations manager, entrepreneur with a diverse background that spans across mentoring high school students in business, leading public relations. I'm not sure how to say this, but at Don Anahand, how do you pronounce that?
So it's Dunanand. It's Pakistani, I
Got you.
believe, Indian.
Got
Yeah.
you. And managing operations at Should High Trust, an adept violinist with over a decade of experience. Kent combines his artistic sensibilities with a sharp business acumen to mentor budding entrepreneurs and foster community development projects. Currently authoring a book aiming at helping young adults achieve financial independence and success, reflecting his commitment to empowering the next generation through education and entrepreneurship. Ken, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Great introduction as well.
Yeah. I'm curious. I clearly the community development aspect got my attention, and I'm all about my nonprofit work and always trying to learn more on how I can help the youth. So that really grabbed my attention. And while it's not that hard to like really get on my show in terms of reaching out to me and stuff, I'm pretty selective with who I pick. So in that regard, I think it's a big deal that you're on this, so I'm like congratulating you in that aspect for being such a good person for the community.
Yeah, and I thank you for having me on. And this is kind of like, I guess, my first quote unquote public appearance when it comes to like going on podcasts and stuff. So this is always a great first start. And I've seen a couple other episodes, and like I'm really excited to be here.
Dope. So you want to get into like life as a military kid and what influenced your approach to entrepreneurship, adaptability?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm still technically under the quote unquote military kid status, says I am still moving consistently. I'm moving again within 2 weeks.
Nice.
But yeah, it's a lot. But so and when I was born with my dad. He was in the Marine Corps. I believe his rank was like around private at that time. So we obviously weren't making too much money, and every about 3 years we would move again, and it would basically almost be like a start over on life. And because I didn't have access to any technology during uh, my youth up until around freshman year in high school, it was always kind of this great. I found a whole group of people who care about, respect me, that I had to build up over 3 years, and it was almost like a restart.
Damn.
And yeah, it's
Damn. Especially if you're not resourceful. So you had to learn to be quick in that aspect, no? To develop
exactly.
relationships quickly.
Yep. And there are some impacts that I see that are what's the right word? That are difficult because now in the area that I'm at, I'm so used to moving every 2 3 years that it's just like it's about that 3 year point. And even though I'm not moving too far away from where I am now, uh, the point still stands. That's like I am in that mental state where it's all right, great, it's another reset. And it's one of those things where it's like, how do I trust people so quick while also knowing that they're going to have the same trust when we have such limited time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and then also the aspect of just I don't want to say like navigating all the time, like around you and having to get reoriented so often. Like, how do you look at the positives of every transition?
Yeah, so this mainly comes back to on top of having a military background, I have a Japanese mother, so very traditional and very based on education. And just basically the way that I've had to grow up thinking is instead of look at everything that I'm leaving behind, it's more like, what if we do go back? For Trip, for a solid 3 years, we would come back to Phoenix, Arizona, to one of my old schools, and I would see a lot of my friends again for even 3 times. But it was still one of those things where it's like, okay, I may have left them, but even so, there still might be a chance I see them again. And so if I just grow who I know, and as long as, I don't do anything too stupid and I
Yeah, I got you.
everyone understands who I am, then maybe in the future we can see each other again. Maybe, at this point I've met over, I'd like to say probably 10,000 people.
Damn.
So through that, it's like, yeah, I can basically go anywhere in the world, and as long as, they might recognize me or I might recognize them, then, I
That's
can
pretty fucking
still,
cool. Yeah,
yeah.
just the fact that you've interacted with that many people, especially, I don't know if you are an introvert. Do you consider yourself one?
So it depends on how you define introvert. So for me, I go off the definition of like, if I'm talking with people, I consistently lose energy throughout the day.
Yeah.
So if that's what you mean, then
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
That
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 is a
being
that's a
said, yeah,
it's just a
sorry,
funny
you go.
definition, but yeah, that's
It
hilarious. It's
is.
true though.
Yeah. I mean, that being said, like, don't get me wrong, I love talking with people. I teach,
Yeah, yeah.
I work with people, so I love it. It's just throughout the day again, like I lose momentum, if
I
that,
think it has to do with exerting and focusing your energy all on the conversation or on the person too, though. Like you're fully centered in there in that moment in that sense.
exactly. Like
Yeah.
I understand that I have such a limited time with people. Like I said, 3 years. That seems like a lot for people, but if I really narrowed it down, like it's less than 1,000 days
Oh
that
yeah.
I get to talk with people. So,
I think about time like that too, where I literally think of 1,000 days for 3 years. Yeah. It's crazy.
right,
And I mean,
yeah,
if
it's
if you wanted to get even more meta with it, there's so many meditative traditions where they think of each breath. You only get this many breaths in your life. So yeah,
yeah.
you can get
I
as meta as you want.
I mean, I love that kind of thinking. I'm not like every breath. Sometimes I'm like, oh wow, let me think about the days, the hours, maybe even the seconds, but I'm not entirely like, how many breaths do I have all the time? But it's still just like a recurring thought that's like, okay, great, let's look at how many days I have left. For right now, it's like I have, I think it's 15 days until I move again.
You
So
sound
it's
like
like,
you've had to learn about time management and really learn to balance and manage your own schedule. Do you have any tips for that? Because I know I could use some work on that organizational aspect.
yeah. So I do want to say first though that I do make a lot of mistakes with this, and currently. I can get more into this later, but I did have several confrontations about just my work-life balance this week, and just I have been committing way too much time to working, but from my belief right now, and this is subject to change over the course of my life, as it should be, but it's important to put the most important things in your life first. And with that, it's important to base what you put your time in based on what your beliefs are. And so let's let's use myself as an example. For me, I play the violin every day for an hour. On top of that, I work on volunteer stuff for a lot of hours
Yeah.
and managing businesses and doing all of this. But really it's all for like a main five goals of like the belief of I want to teach other people and help other people. I want people to endure pain, but not the same pain that I go through because I can help them out and teach them the lesson without the scar. And it just the beliefs of I want to help others as much as I can, and of course, some of it is for personal benefit, but the overarching goal is how can I impact the most people?
And can you speak to, this is a great segue because I often try to get the most out of my guests to be like, hey, I don't know if you've done free work or know what it's like to volunteer, but it often leads to other opportunities. Like it might be free now, or you might get some experience out of it, it might be on your resume, but you really never know what something's going to lead to. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so this is obviously like one of the I guess this is one of the craziest stories you'll ever hear from something like this. But
Nice. Perfect.
yeah, you a lot of entertainment going on here. So um let's just say it starts off with just a website, and then it ended up with me being able to contact government officials outside of America. So uh in the beginning, I've been working in the past with schools and just online work. I never really wanted to get paid because I believe I knew that my work wasn't, it was good enough to get paid, but not enough to get paid well for my time. And so it's just I looked at the balance of things and was like, okay, well, I can either volunteer all my time, learn, and then later on get paid a lot, or, use all that goodwill to forward it onto other people so that way other people get even more help through me. But what I did was I went to this website. It's called Volunteer Match. And they don't sponsor me in any way, but I do fully support their platform. And, they've been great to me. So that's how I first got in touch with Dunanand. And I started working with them for about half a year. And this story itself doesn't revolve around Dunanand, but we can get into them later as well. But that's when I got on with Shruti Trust. And I met up with my boss. His name is Raghavendra. He's a really cool dude. He's from India. And, he wants to educate people like I do. We mainly are teaching people through online courses uh, in India and Indian schools. So far, we have 12 schools, over 1,000 students. We're looking at growing into different countries. I'm aware that, I'm trying to help negotiate a deal with the school that I went with here in America. And we're looking at, all these countries, all these opportunities. But one of the big ones was I wanted to see what was the country with the least education standards set in it. And one that I found was South Sudan. They'd
Wow.
just gone through a revolution, and they didn't have the financial support to be able to run a good education system. And we're
Can
still
you,
working on that.
how bad is it? Like, can you just elaborate a little bit on how bad the system is there at the time?
Yeah, so it's still just as bad, and we are still working on it. And the government does know that we're trying to help, and they genuinely do care about their citizens. And I have nothing bad to say about them whatsoever. But as for the citizens, it's like they barely have a budget. So like for the high school that I go to, it's $180 million per year for this district. And with South Sudan, that's basically their budget for the entire country. And
Wow.
like that may be a little bit of an over exaggeration. I don't know their entire budget, but their GDP is the, the ratio of GDP versus like what they could put into education versus other things. That's around the ballpark of where I think it would be at.
Yeah, so they're trying to
But
survive right now, basically.
exactly. And it doesn't help that their country is full of, for the lack of a better word, terrorists. So on top of all this, and they don't have a budget, uh, there's 3.8 million kids out of five who can't attend school because, they're being kidnapped, they're being murdered. Terrorists are coming in and bombing and shooting their parents, the kids, the woman, the children. that stuff really sucks. But, as for the crazy thing that I get to do, and, I do get an opportunity to do this, I get to help these families, but I guess for my own self, I was offered, and I'm soon going to be taking up on it. I met with, I believe it was one of the treasurers of education in South Sudan. Then I met with his assistant, and his assistant helps sell gold in mass with the government, about a kilogram of gold per transaction, or a minimum of a kilogram of gold per transaction. And I get to sell it on their behalf and get a bit of commission off of that if I wanted to.
Nice. Nice.
So, yeah, I know that that was a lot to unpack, but
For sure. And
you know, yeah.
no, continue, because I think there was another aspect that you wanted to dive into. You're like, we can get into that a little later, which I think this was the beginning of it, right?
Yeah, this is, I believe it was with Dunanand and just my work with them.
Got you. Got you. Let's get into a little bit of some controversial comments here. Like, if you can look
Oh,
back, what's one thing that you would have done differently in your career based on what you know now?
so I want to provide something for your audience as well and provide some value. And I know, this first one, it won't really help them, but I wish I could have started sooner. I really picked up my life. I've always tried to be helpful and had an open mind and always went all in with everything that I did. But as for exactly what I do, as in like volunteering professionally in the way that I do now, I wish I started sooner. I even wish that I started doing this kind of stuff when I was 6 years old, 2 years old, even. Like, that's ridiculous to think about, but those years do compound. And like, if I talked to myself 5 years ago, I would be like, "Hey, Ken, you're extremely dumb. Here's everything that I know now." And those 5 years compound into what I know now. And 10 years from now, it's gonna be like, "Wow, I know a ton of things that I wish I would have known 10 years ago."
It's
So
funny
like,
because I feel that aspect in terms of like holding things I should have released. So it could be research, it could be art, not putting things out into the world. It's like you never know where it would be later had you have just not, I don't know, hesitated. Another word, started sooner. It's a good way to put it.
yeah, exactly. That's also like one of the reasons why I reached out to you for this podcast. And I've I've recently been thinking, I look at business a lot and I use business analogies. But one of my favorite creators, Alex Shamazi, he was just like, look at building a brand. I started building a brand 2 years ago. Look at where I am now. What would have happened if I started building my brand 10 years back when I started getting into business? Like, oh wow, I should start, getting out there more. And even if I'm not going to be great at it at first, the fact that I'm still doing it now, it's better that I start doing something now and have something 10 years later. But if I were to go back, I would wish I started sooner.
The funny part is this is also one of those things where our parents aren't telling us to start brands or go play video games as a profession. So these are things we had to learn on our own in that aspect.
Exactly. And I think it's, you know, I also look at culture a lot. The culture of the way we live today is like it incentivizes parents to be there for their children, but it almost feels like the hard lessons aren't being learned thoroughly. And so like one of those things of like, hey, do everything you can because you might not get the same opportunities. I don't think that really is expressed enough within our society. And I genuinely do believe like a lot of parents put their kids' mental health first, and that should be a priority. Mental and physical health are huge. But as a subset to that, I don't feel like the parents really teach, hey, even though these are really important, it also needs to be known that if you focus everything on these, you're never going to get anywhere. So while focusing on these, learn to manage your time to focus on everything.
That's
and that
interesting.
includes work and meaning. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you just went into like values that were lacking culturally in society because I don't think we think about that. I think it's a lot of put the tablet and pacify and those kinds of behaviors towards our kids and stuff.
Yeah.
I,
I feel like it does need to be discussed, and it's not discussed enough. But also, it's just because no one really thinks about it, and it's just one of those things where it's like, well, it's good to bring it up now and just maybe try and affect one person's life, even
or
one person who listens.
also not until it's a problem, right? Like not until the scores are so bad or we're dependent on technology like GPT, for example, to be passing tests, and we're like, oh, something's there's a problem now. So yeah,
Yeah,
it sucks. Things got to get so bad.
it it's definitely getting to that point soon, so it's good to know that now. I do actually have a couple interesting stories with like ChatGPT and AI if you do want me to get into
No, go
that.
for it. Go for it.
So I still do school and I'm still uh, doing everything I can to get the education that I need and want for where I'm going. And that being said, one of the biggest things that I want to learn about is AI. Um, I personally am a big fan of AI. I know that's pretty controversial to say, but I'm not a fan of it taking over creative works and stuff like that. But as for an assistant more than
Oh yeah.
something that just does everything,
Yeah, I'm
I
excited about
think
that.
that's right. Yeah. But I feel like with my experience, I have used it more than just an assistant and more as a tool to use to do my work. Now, fortunately, I caught this early on, and I'm learning to better manage how to use it as an assistant, not as a tool. But I will admit that even though I have a couple friends who do a lot of technology stuff and help create AI. I give them databases and like, hey, look, if you can and if you have the time, I'd really like this if you can make an AI for me that can do XYZ based on XYZ information. So I would like to know which houses I should hit on this window washing business based on the Phoenix location and how many people open their doors to salesmen and which neighborhoods work best.
Wow.
You know, like that's just an example of like what I would give, and like I use that as a tool and as an assistant to okay, let's plan out routes. But um, before I would use it for a lot of my schoolwork, and like it it got so deep as to like look, I can do my own research, but at the same time, it's like I am managing several different things. Like I'm helping manage nonprofits,
Yeah.
a company,
Same.
and it's like to me at the time, it was like, well, I feel like while high school education is important, I do also go to college for some of my education, and I feel like that college education that's more specialized is more important to me than the high school education. So what I'll do is I'll just have it do all the research for me. And so I'll just learn off that and just do the work based on the information AI gives me.
Interesting. So it's almost like a study guide that's simplified.
Exactly. I didn't take it so far as to, okay, ChatGPT, do this, and then I copy paste. But I do feel like I used AI to an overextent during like my schoolwork, and it definitely was a mistake that I have, and it made me a lot lazier as a person in terms of schoolwork, which I do regret. But at the same time, it's like I learned that lesson thankfully early on. And, this happened when ChatGPT first came out in November of 2021, I believe. And, based on that, I stopped at around January, February 2022. And it's May 2024 as of doing this interview. And I'm still trying to get back into not being lazy like that.
The funny part that I would argue against it is like our parents went from typewriters. Do you know what I mean? Like you couldn't make mistakes on
Right.
that. And here we are where it's like done on another level of convenience for us. So
Exactly.
yeah, it's funny. Like we can't even technically get that time period back of where we had to go to libraries and had to take notes out of books. It's non-existent. We don't really have to,
Yeah.
but it's an option.
Yeah, it's like one of those things where it's weird to think how much time has passed. I mean, I'm really, really young, and like I'm so young as to like I was around the age of 2 when the 2008 crash happened. So like I guess that I'm around the 17, 18-year old age, and like I am very, very young for me. But even during that time, it's like I saw the rise of social media, quote unquote, of like YouTube and algorithmic content creation, if that makes sense. But even thinking back as to typewriters and even before that, the Industrial Revolution, it's like, wow, within 100 years,
Yeah.
we can't go back. Everything's changed.
Yeah, that makes me real curious how AI is going to look in the future too. Like near
I,
future, you know. I
yeah, I do agree with that as well.
think a lot of sci-fi is going to come to life, but in traditional schooling system, do you feel like it's failing today's youth by not teaching essential skills like entrepreneurship, financial literacy?
So I have been to amazing schools, and I want to clarify that. Like, every, I think there's only one school that I've been to that I wasn't a big fan of, but overall, in the schools that I've been to, I understand I've been very privileged to be in the schools that teach a lot of the fundamental skills. Not all of them, but enough to, I guess, get by in life if you don't further your study into it like I have. That being said, based on everything that I know of the current traditional education system, I feel like it's a good system that we can start off with, but we need to figure out how to implement better. Hmm. The school system now teaches how to think, but I think the way that they're doing that is just through monotonous tasks that students aren't very engaged in. Even now, just like I can't stand my math class. It's so boring. It's so repetitive, and it's like it's new every day, but at the same time, it feels like the same old things, and it's like I'm never gonna use this, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So in that respect, it's failing. But in the respect of like it does teach students because let's be honest, not everyone can be a big entrepreneur. Not everyone can be a big music artist. Like unfortunate as enough as it is, there are still people who need to be in like desk jobs. There's still people who need to do blue collar jobs, white collar jobs, who need to be farmers. And as unfortunate as it is, that's the way society's set up. I, I wish the school system would give skills on, or the school system does teach how to be able to work for extended periods of time and to be able to just toughen through the work. Unfortunately, our generation takes that uh, ideation. When I say my generation, I mean like Gen Z, Gen Alpha. We take this ideation of great, the school system's failing us, so none of it matters. Let's not care. And it's like I can see where you're coming from, and I there's another school system, and I'll get to that in a second, that I really personally like. But as for the traditional school system, it's like even though yes, at the top they may not be doing enough to be helping create or to help teach financial knowledge or a knowledge of just like different segments. They teach the core skills of each subject that you may need to know throughout your career. But even with these core classes, they're even colleges, they're more committed towards math, science, history, uh, English, rather than the actual what it should be, which is the extracurriculars and the uh, independent classes that a student can choose to take, like music or like I know one of the big ones is in my school is marketing and culture, cooking,
Yeah. Culinary, right?
culinary. That's the one.
Got
Yep.
you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, these are good points. You broke that down pretty good too. Can businesses genuinely afford to prioritize social impact over profitability? What are your thoughts?
So that's a pretty good question.
Because I get the competitive market aspect, you know?
Yeah. So I think that it's mainly a trade-off because a business is a business for a reason. You're in it to make a profit. That's the whole goal of a business. If not, it would have been a charity.
Yeah, I've heard that.
That
I've heard
being
that. It's a good quote.
exactly. That being said, you know, I feel like businesses don't do enough to try and care for the community. I don't want to boast and be like, oh, I'm doing all these great things. Like uh, in the businesses that I help run, I help teach kids to run their businesses. And, from there, when they make profits, I'll go up to them and be like, hey, look, it's great that I'm helping you do this. I know you were talking about paying me possibly, or, giving me a percentage or in reinvesting a percentage, why don't we put that percentage into goodwill, into helping other people? So it's like the businesses that I help with, not the business that I own, that one I'll get to, but the businesses that I help teach and help teach people how to run, I try to get them like, for me, if you're small, about 20%, as long as it's 20% of profit should go to helping out those in need. But for me, what I do instead is I try to take it a bit further. And a lot of people say that I'm exploiting this class. And while I understand their point, that's not really the point of why I'm trying to do this. So in the business I help run with my co-founder, we do wash windows in the Phoenix area, and we are doing our best to try to employ the homeless. Now, of course, being a small business, being that, I don't take any profit, but my co-founder needs to take a bit of profit from this. We wash windows for below market price. We can't pay our employees the money that, is considered industry standard because they don't really have our employees wouldn't have great reputation as they're homeless. Not to say that they're not great people, just their reputation may not be
Yep.
great. And the fact that, we can't really afford to give them the money that they do deserve, even with the reputation that they could have. If like their reputation's great, we still wouldn't be able to afford to pay them even industry standard. That being said, what we do is we bring them in, we give them I think let's see, we wash windows for about $6 per pane. And what we do is $1 goes to my co-founder, $1 goes into supplies since we can get them for very, very cheap. Then the $4 is split up into $2 are for whoever is doing the job. And this is per window, by the way. This is not like for the entire job.
Yep. Yep.
But $2 goes to the people who are on the job site minus the co-founder who are actually hands-on working. Then $2 is helping go to another person who uh, is coming off the streets. Like if I were to drive out right now and go looking around and find someone off the streets, great, we have something to work with so that way they can be onboarded. We can teach them. And like if they're a lot of people that we're working with, since they're on the street, they take a lot of drugs. And like I get it. I'm not saying that I've been there, but like I get what that's like when you're in such a desperate state that where like that might be one of the last options that you have. I've been fortunate enough to where like I steered away from that, but I do understand that these things happen. But those $2 can go into not only feeding them until we can get them trained, getting them a hotel, but also, detox, getting them into detox, getting them clean, and trying to provide everything we
Man,
can for them.
it's so cool that you're talking about all this. I'm gonna go into a little personal story here. Um, so I as well am trying to get. This is an older project, and I submitted for a HUD Pro Housing Grant. Not sure if you're familiar with this, but they had this competition for whoever could come up with an affordable housing. And my model was to try to copy the Japanese capsule hotels. And I had come up with an entire community concept, like how we'd integrate people and just the entire I still have the document and stuff. I can send it to you after this. But just the concept of how can we get people to have minimal living standards, right? Like maybe you don't have a lot of belongings. Maybe you just want to rent naps and you don't want to live there. You also need to get mail though, right? Like there's all these things I was taking into consideration, and then how you can like rent the pods. Um, but mainly the idea of minimal living, right? Like people don't have a lot of belongings and like a new level of starting out. Like if you were in a video game and you had nothing, like real like some giant MMO, you usually don't have much of a belonging. Like some people need a place to begin and start over. And that was kind of my initial inception for it's called Zen Box is what I came up with. But I'll definitely send it to you after this to see your opinion on it, and maybe we can work on it together or refine it just to get your opinion.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds something like right up my lane, and like that's really cool that you do that as well. I mean, that's something that most people never even think about. I mean, I've been looking at the homeless situation. I was like, well, there's not really much that we can do other than, try help the homeless get enough money to be able to afford all this. Like, I never really thought of things like that. Of like, what if we tried minimal living like the Japanese capsule hotel? I never thought of it like that, and that's something that we can definitely talk about later. And
For sure.
I'm definitely more than willing to help out with that. That
and
seems really
and
interesting.
what's crazy is like the only real issues are zoning laws, like, and that's not that hard to get passed with the city. Like it's some little bit of reform if it means that hundreds of people can benefit instead of like a few, because right now you spend millions of dollars and maybe like 10 to 20 people can benefit right now, and it's just not efficient with what we're yeah. That's the long story short of the Zen Box, but we'll talk about it more. um, is it ethical for marketers to use psychological tactics to influence consumer behavior, especially when
Ooh,
targeting vulnerable populations such as the youth? Because I mean,
ooh,
I'm thinking like vaping, things like that. Yeah.
yeah. So so I'll go with like the vaping and basically stuff that physically does hurt your health. That kind of stuff, never okay. I'm a firm believer if it hurts you, then just let the people who uh just see it and want to get it, sure, if they really want it and they're legally allowed to, let them get it. Like you can't really stop anyone from doing anything, and like you shouldn't. It's their life, it's their choices. But that being said, influencing the lives of the vulnerable. So like I'm taking it to the extreme here, but with uh, vaping commercials, like you said, the teens to the youth, they do use colorful colors in their marketing,
Yeah, it's the
and they
first
really,
one.
right? Yeah, they
It's
just
all that comes to
go
mind. It's all that comes to mind.
all that comes to mind. But yeah, they really do target the youth, and it's like, isn't it really that? I get that they're in it for the money, and as they should be. They're a company; they should go for the money. But at what point? It's like it's one of those things where it's like I wish the government would step in and regulate this, because it's like at what point is it marketing and growing a business versus marketing and growing a business while having the side effect of killing millions of people over the lifetime of just my generation, nonetheless the generation of the company. And like I heard this statistic somewhere before, but like basically for the result of killing people, either a cigarette company or a vaping company made $12 billion. But the US government came in and was like, hey, you are killing people. And they only took $7 billion, which means a company that basically kills people is allowed to keep $5 billion for killing people. It's,
Still make
I,
profit.
yeah.
Right? Like there
And
should
I
be a
don't,
complete punishment of like, all right, no profit for you.
exactly. Like, and I get that, they still do need to make a profit and it's their job, their livelihood. Like, it should only be, I guess, to cover the costs. Like, great, your salary, it's like 70,000 a year because you're a really high role in a company that kills people. Sure, I get it. You need to feed your family. Go for it. But like any profit on top of that, it's not necessary. It's not, there's
Feel
no
it.
point to it.
I feel
Yeah.
that.
I know I went to an extreme there, but
Nah,
it's like,
we need to for sure. And
yeah, for
that's
something
the
like
point.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the age of digital transformation, is the human element becoming obsolete in business, or are we losing something more valuable as a result?
Can you ask that again? Hmm.
In the age of digital transformation, is the human element becoming obsolete in business? Are we losing something valuable as a result?
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I got it right. So I personally love the fact that we have a lot of things digital. I mean, even this podcast is digital. It would be really hard for me to fly out to where you're at and do this
Yeah.
interview. So in that respect, I think that it's great. But I do think that uh, just the human experience being in business, it's definitely not there anymore. I'm back 50, 100 years ago. It was uh, we get a phone. You would get a phone call. It's like, great, okay. Now that I have the necessary information of like this is the idea of what's going on. Now I have to go meet up in person to make sure that I'm getting everything correct. Now it's like, great, thanks for the information. Just send over the documents or send over this, send over that. And it's really nice to have that. But at the same time, like having the option, if available, to meet up in person and like have that human experience because, you know, we are people. We are, I mean, this seems weird to say, but we are animals. We are driven by uh, biology and just like basically this is a little weird for me to say, but just like at its core, we are really just like people and we're controlled by chemical reactions in our brains. And it's really dulled when the chemical reactions aren't able to really be expressed and it does create a lot of today's problems with the younger generations to where it's like we do feel lonely and we do feel really depressed all the time because we don't, even not just in business but overall, we don't get that human experience. And with also culture, it's like even when we do meet up in person back 50, 100 years ago, you could go out and play with people and hug, high five, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Nowadays it's like I'm weird if I hug anyone. And it's like it's one of those things where it's like what it is that human nature I wish would come back, and it is losing itself with digital, and I feel like it does need to be brought back. But I do understand the convenience and the efficiency with technology in business terms as profit and loss. There's no reason unless you're trying to sell to a big client, there's no reason to meet up in person. The only reason you meet up in person is to sell to a big client. Everything else can be done digitally and have automated systems.
I know I was reading on your resume or background about life in Japan. Do you have any opinions on like the differences of maybe business or life or just I mean, since we're on that topic of transformation, I was thinking maybe they have more of a relationship to nature and the earth and people than we do. But I know they're also to themselves in respect, you know.
Yeah. So, uh, Japan. So I'm to Japan. I'm a foreigner. I'm half white, half Japanese. So, in Japan, if you're not fully Japanese, you're not
Wow.
Japanese.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and of course, like that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but like if I were to walk out in public in Japan, like I would get stared at way too much, like a considerable
You really
amount.
stand out like that? You think so?
Yeah, I mean to us in America, it's like we walk around and we see people of every race. I can walk outside right now and see a group of people, black, Hispanic, white, Asian, you know, every
Everything.
race.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in Japan, like because I'm so conditioned to America, in Japan I'm like, oh wow, everyone's Asian. I can tell they're different people just because I've been in Japan long enough to be able to just make unique distinctions between people. But like it's like if you were to walk into a room right now full of just Japanese people, you'd be like, well, I was in a room full of Japanese people, and while I know that they're all different people, it's like they're all kind of the same.
Mhm.
But as in like physical appearance wise, I want to
For
make
sure.
that very
For sure.
clear.
For sure.
But as for me, it's like imagine you walk into a room full of Asian people and then you see a black guy in the back. You're like, oh,
That's
well, I can.
crazy that you stand out
Yeah,
like that.
it's the same concept. Yeah, like I know like a lot of people that I work with are uh, over the age of like 40 and 50, and like they have different perspectives on like what's culturally acceptable. And working with them, I might say this and it might be a little bit I guess quote unquote, or not quote unquote, but a little bit harsh. But like Asians, we do have a bit more of a yellow tone, but because I'm half white, I don't really have. I have a bit of a yellow tone, but I am more white than the people in Japan. So, I do stand out, even though it's just a little bit in our eyes. To Japan, it's like I'm a completely different person.
My gosh. That's funny.
Yeah.
So is it hard to make relationships or even doing business in that aspect? What's life like?
So, yeah. So I haven't really done too much business in Japan.
Hmm.
Japan is a very closed off society, like you said. Um, but as for building relationships, although it is really hard to build relationships there. I will admit that I'm not the best Japanese speaker, so that's also part of it.
Hmm.
But all the people that I did build relationships over in Japan, they were either because I did go to school in Japan for months at a time whenever I'd go visit during the summer, and I would talk with an English translator in the class, and like Japanese schooling system. I would like to say it's better than America. It's not perfect, but it's still great. And like they even gave me my own like they had someone come in to basically be my own translator for the class.
Wow.
So yeah, like they really care about each individual student, especially foreigners, because even though they are discriminatory towards foreigners, they still want to be like, hey,
They
we
want to have a good
understand that
impression.
as exactly.
Hospitality, they still have that understanding of how you treat people. I get you.
Yeah, and they do a great job at that as well. But yeah, like they do a great job, and all the relationships that I built there are just because like I was technically discriminated against. I didn't feel discriminated against, but it was obvious. Uh, but like all the relationships that I've built there have either been from school or just in Japanese terms, like in Japanese culture, the crazy people. For us in America, it's just like an average person. Oh, I love creating music, and like I'll go out and perform for people just because I want to. That to Japan, that's crazy because it's like you're standing out. You want to be uniform. You want to be held back. But here in America, it's
Interesting.
like that's not
Yeah,
a thing.
we promote our expression and our opinions and standing out and freedom. I get you. I get you.
Exactly. But like, yeah, the culture there though, like even though a lot of people say that uh, Japanese culture itself isn't great because you know everyone needs to be the same. I do agree with a lot of other people who say that Japan's culture is one of the best in the world as in terms of just like how
Harmony, huh?
nice the people are, the harmony. The streets. I can go to Japan right now and go to legitimately any street, and I will genuinely be shocked if I find a single piece of trash on the floor. Like it is genuinely that great of a society. But uh, that being said, like there's always pros and cons. Even though they have a great society and like they're very clean, they're very kind, very helpful, they do have a lot more depression because they aren't allowed to express themselves. And
Wow. So
yeah, it's like
they're holding a lot of things in that regard.
exactly. I remember once I got into and this was just because I was extremely dumb, but I got into a heated argument with my sister, and uh, I was fortunate enough. We were living with my grandmother, and she had built her own house, and that's very rare in Japan. Like, it
Wow.
was a two-story house, and although it's small in America's standards, in Japan standards, it was massive. I think it was a two-story house, but it was like 1,000 square feet,
Yeah,
1,200
that's like
something.
what's funny is it's like the average apartment, but that's huge, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. In
Yeah.
Japan, it's like you get 5 to 800 square feet.
Yeah.
So 1,200,
Yeah.
1,200 square foot. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so me and my sister were arguing downstairs, and it was getting really heated, and I started raising my voice. And, the culture there is like, you don't want to stand out, and, you shouldn't share your feelings. But so bad that my mother came downstairs, and because me and my mom's the only one in that house who knows English well, like the only adult in that house who knows English well. She came down and she was like, "Hey, don't yell because the neighbors will call the cop because they think you're gonna murder someone because I'm
Oh,
raising my voice."
wow.
Like it's that bad on
Wow.
like you can't express yourself.
Perception is like something bad's happening. Wow.
Yeah,
Interesting. Very
it's
interesting.
a it's a very interesting thing to think about. And of course, like I think she may have been over exaggerating
But
looking,
it's
but at
possible
the
though.
same
But
time, it is possible. Yeah.
that really does go to show how different the culture views any escalation, right? The slightest of anything before it even happens. Even yeah, that's pretty interesting. I was
Yeah.
gonna ask too. One on the depression aspect, I was gonna say I'm sure Japanese value music more than most cultures for that reason too, right? If you're depressed, like the ways they have to escape are super minimal, so they're probably looking for different art forms and things. And the other thing I was gonna say is, do you think your relationships were, or some of them were formed off people maybe feeling bad that you were an outsider or like foreigner, that they knew how you were being treated?
Yeah, I'll get through the second one first because that one like is pretty straightforward answer. So I think the ones that I built in the school were uh because I was just a foreigner, and like it was because I was an outsider. You know, we had an English class there, and it was pretty funny because I knew more English than the English teacher. But like during that class, the schedule there is split up into like 12 different classes, and like uh, there were I think there were two classes that the students each got to choose, and four uh, common core classes like we have here in America, but the rest were also like life skills like English. since English is a big deal in Japan. But during that class, they would, it wasn't even like a, let's try to learn how to speak. For the time that I was there, for the months that I was there, they'd already learned how to say, do you like to play soccer? And how are you feeling? And like they would just repeat those two phrases over and over and over. And like,
That's pretty
you
funny.
know, right? It's hilarious. Every day I came in and I was like, of course, there were some points where I was like, oh my gosh, they just keep asking me this. But like, always throughout the time, it was like I kept looking forward to that because it's like I find it really funny, and I want to make sure that they're having fun with it too. So,
You're like, at least
uh,
they care about how I'm doing, right? That's their way of showing like it's their hello or good morning in a sense.
exactly, and like they were also it was also for their own benefit as well. Like they've never seen someone outside of Japan, so to them it's like, whoa, this is a crazy experience. It's like we've lived in this bubble, but this person came from outside our bubble and came in, and he's nothing like us. So we want to try and, even though we couldn't communicate well, and like it had to be through the translator, like they're like, wow, he is really loud and noisy, but that's really cool that he feels like it's okay to be loud and noisy. And like being loud and noisy, that here I'm quiet, reserved
You're
in
just being
most
yourself, and
situations.
they're freaking out on your authenticity, right? You're just
Exactly.
yeah.
Just
They're like,
like
this
we
person knows how to freely express himself, and they're just like in shock.
exactly. It's like to them, it's like we've never seen anyone express themselves ever, and like there always is, and like I admire them for this, but at the same time, I wish it wasn't so bad. But they always uphold a professional view to everyone in the house, out of the house, in school, out of school, in jobs. Like it sucks that they're always professional, or it's great that they're always professional, but at the same time, that lack of expressing themselves, like it does a little to be like, I'm the one who opened their eyes to that possibility.
Do you think that that speaks to their art, like in terms of their output? I know that they're like what probably most sought after for animation and different aspects, but it's definitely my favorite culture when it comes to art.
Yeah. So as for like the average Japanese person, I know that uh, they really do like to listen to the music, and they listen to music at any given chance when they're at home. Unfortunately for them, like it's not common to wear earbuds anywhere. So like to them, it's like it's their safe space that they can only have in certain locations. So
Interesting.
while they do value it, it's like I think they value it so much because they're so restricted to when they get to experience that as well.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. That's interesting. Especially the whole safe space aspect. Like I'm like they probably have a certain chair, a certain space, and they really tune in those moments. Like it's really personal. Never really thought about
yeah,
that as opposed to we just put on earbuds and walk around everywhere in our lives consistently,
right.
conversations in and out. Yeah.
Like I'm even now, like I can go outside, talk to someone, just take an earbud out, be listening to music or podcasts, listening to
Yeah.
them. In Japan, they're just like, wow, he has an earbud in. He doesn't care about us.
Oh
Then
my
it's
gosh.
like, whoa, I never said I didn't care about you. I'm just listening to
Wow.
music.
Yeah, they think you're just
Yeah,
zoning out the entire world and everyone's not important but you or something. I see.
exactly.
It can be seen as an egotistical thing, I suppose. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
But as for like also the artists there, I haven't spoken to any of the like big artists there, but like I've met up with a few bands. I have some friends over in Japan who own local bars and would have musicians come in and play, and I would be there. Of course, I wouldn't drink, but like I would just be there hanging out, having fun, interacting with the people there as much as I could. But like the musicians there, they also express themselves through music as it's their job. But to them, it's like their music is everything they have. So for us, and like for me recently, I've had some of the worst months of my life happen recently, which I'm it sucks, but I was able to vent about it and like talk about it with people. And like I talked about it on like my Snapchat stories, and like I would talk about, hey, look, this is everything that's going on. My life kind of sucks right now. I just need to let it out. For them, they don't get that. And for them, it's like everything, all of this pent up, built up emotion over decades of their lives, it's all compressed into 1 to 2 songs that they can write every year. Because if they write any more songs, then it's like, is it really enough meaning? They question if they can put enough meaning for themselves or their audience. It's like it's hard to explain, but from what they've told me, it's like they need to compress their entire life stress into one 3 minute song every 6 months because that's the only way they can do it. They can't express themselves.
One of the other things I find fascinating is they're super generous, but also not super like willing to just accept help from anyone. So like they themselves will go out and help other countries in like many different aspects, like Africa, things like that, different aspects of the world, but are reluctant to also have the help firsthand. Rightfully so. I guess you could probably have some hate towards America from the past, but I it's just interesting how receptive they are toward being helped and outsider influence and things like that, because I'm sure their government's not easy to work with.
Yeah, I actually do have a little bit of that myself. I mean, I learned this from the Japanese culture, but it's like uh, again, part of the reason why like I've had a rough couple months was because I'm so used to not getting help because I'm like I always want to provide value. I always want to give, and like for myself and for I'm not going to speak on behalf of all of the Japanese culture, but like from how I viewed it from the Japanese culture was it feels selfish to get help because even though I like right now I'm trying to change my set of beliefs of like I don't deserve the help to hey, I might not deserve it, but at least I should get it. Like it's not
Might push you along to delegate a little bit, you know?
exactly, but it's like it's so selfish to ask for help because like if it was really that bad, then you wouldn't have taken up the responsibilities. But then again, it's like people are coming up to you asking for your help. It's like, oh, well, they're asking for my help. They probably need it more than me. So I'm going to help them out. So it's one of those things where it's like, it feels selfish to ask, but when anyone else asks, it's like they're in a worse state. Even if they're not, it still feels like that to each individual. And like to myself, it's like, I sign up to help for everything because I feel like of course I do want to help. I genuinely do. But part of that is like, I want to help because I feel selfish if I don't help and just focus only on getting something that I want.
It's a good point. That's a super good point. I think most people operate from like, what do I get out of it first most of the time? But then you're over here talking about maybe a little bit of could be people pleasing, right? You want to help everybody, you don't want to say no to everyone. So I can relate to that aspect too. You're like, I'll make time, I'll squeeze it in somewhere, I'll get back to you. Just sometimes it's just hard to say no, especially when you know you can help, maybe just not right now. I feel that.
Yeah,
I feel
no,
that.
definitely. Yeah,
Is
it's oh,
go,
you go,
go,
you go. Yeah.
just going to the next question unless you have anything else on that.
Uh, I'm yeah, I guess on the people pleaser part, like I have felt that so much, and like even now, still I'm still like helping way more than I should, and well, it's not all right to do this, and I genuinely hope no one else does what I do, even if that makes me hypocritical. Like I do genuinely lose sleep just to help other people out, because they do need the help, and like it's again in that culture of helping others because I feel selfish if I don't.
I
Yeah.
super relate to that. Yeah. Do you think the push for young entrepreneurs to aim for rapid scalability creating a bubble that undermines sustainable business practices?
So I think when it comes to the youth, building businesses and scaling it fast, I'm not a personal big fan of, those people who are like, oh, I'm gonna create a business and then immediately try to cash out and like, great, it's $1 million business, great, let me take the money out. Of course, if you get that opportunity, then great, but reinvest and like scale scale it out, maybe not high, but scale out your knowledge and your company a mile wide with everything that you have, and then build up a mile high instead of trying to build a mile high and everything crumbles as soon as it's let go. But
That's a good point. Think more broad.
exactly, think long term, maybe not just short term, which I do know is incredibly hard for a lot of kids since I'm even myself. I've only been alive 17 years. I don't really know what it's like to put, well, I do know it's like to basically be working for 10 years and like trying to help everyone, but like I don't know what it's like to think 30 years ahead. I try to, but I don't know what it's like to live 30 years. So how can I expect to think 30 years in the future? And it's the same thing with kids. And it's like, they don't, luckily, I'm able to have a longer term thinking than most kids. And I'm very thankful for that. But with a lot of kids, it's like, great, uh, I can see about a year into the future at most because they're so used to, great, the school year's 1 year, then everything changes. The next year happens, everything changes. And it's so used to that it's a little bit sad that it is like that, but of course, like it's understandable. They're used to every year is a different year, so it's almost like no matter what happens, next year is going to happen, and I can change next year anyway.
That's a good point. How do you apply lessons from your musical background, like particularly violin playing? How do you put it towards your business strategies? Anything specific?
Yeah, so I I personally I'm a big fan of playing the violin, like as in an orchestra. But as for like individual practice, I've always been reluctant to do so, just because to me it's like I don't get that sense of a community with me. But playing with an orchestra, I do love it. But at the same time, to play with orchestras, like right now, I'm playing with one of the best orchestras in all of Arizona, the Phoenix Youth Symphony. Not
Wow,
to brag, but just like
that's super cool though. That's rare, dude.
yeah,
Underappreciated. That's a big deal. Like, there's not very many left in existence, so that's a huge deal.
yeah. It's a little sad that there's not many left. I wish we could change that.
I
Like,
agree. Yeah,
yeah, but in order to get to like the level, in order to play with some of the best musicians in the world, you do have to be able to put in the time alone when no one sees you. And like that same goes with business and game development, anything like I like putting stuff like game development and arts things first because I know a lot of people like talking about that stuff. Like if you make a game, it's not the 2 hours that you are sharing footage of just like, hey, look, I made this character move. Hey, look, I made this design. It's the countless hours of, oh my God, this character isn't moving the way I need it to. And so you spend hours and hours and hours learning how do I move this character the way I need it to. And it's the same thing that goes with violin and business, where it's like, I I see where I want to be. I can see some of the problems, but it's like where where can I or sorry, not where. How can I fix this now? And even if no one sees, it's still something that's going to impact later on. And if I don't fix it now, everyone's going to see that I didn't try hard enough, and everyone's going to laugh at me regardless because I didn't put in the effort.
you also made me think though, like, what is the equivalent for creatives that's an orchestra, right? Like, where do you take your business thoughts or creative ideas and go congregate and build together with other people? Where do you go? And I don't know how to explain that, but yeah, there needs to be an equivalent.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And some of the I'm very limited on my knowledge with it, but like I know that the main two things that people really like doing in the creative field is like drawing and music. And so like with my school, they're very supportive of uh, some of the arts classes. And while they may not, the arts department may not get the funding they deserve, and the students there really build a culture and community. And like you really don't get that experience anywhere else other than in that community. Like it's nothing that can be put into words and just needs to be felt. And it's something that I hope that everyone gets to experience.
Are there any specific skills you feel younger entrepreneurs are lacking these days? Friends around you, people your age?
Yeah, one that I can see every day is the lack of discipline. And it's it's good that uh, I I'm not the most disciplined person in the world, but I have enough to be able to, force myself to do things when I need it to be done, and help other people get on track as well. So, like even earlier today, before this interview, I saw on one of my clients. I call my students clients just because it's like I want to keep that professional relationship. But when my clients posted on their Instagram story of them going to an arcade when I know that they can only operate their business because of school 2 days a week, which are the weekends, I'm like, hey, is it really necessary to go to an arcade when you should be working? It's like, you do have a point. And so like now he went to the arcade for an hour and was like, hey, look, it's fine. Go to the arcade for an hour, have fun, decompress. But after an hour, get back to working because you want this because this person genuinely loves business and wants to get ahead in business. And is like, hey, do what you need to. Go to the arcade for an hour, but after you go to the arcade, just go back and work.
So funny.
So
Yeah, I definitely find it hard to get off work too, though. I'm pretty much like you in that aspect where I can't even pull myself away, so an arcade would be beneficial. uh,
yeah,
so you talked about helping students start businesses. Could you, I don't know, talk about maybe how you help generate substantial revenue or what foundational advice to start with? Something like any of those?
yeah. So I don't want to go into like exact numbers
Yeah,
because
no, of
I'm
course
not.
not.
Yeah,
Keep it confidential. I
but
got you.
yep. I mean it's not necessarily confidential. More just like I don't want to spread things around and like yeah put more pressure on my students. But like a lot of the information I teach a lot of like in the beginning it's really I teach them everything that they'll need to know to start a business. So I teach them how to file an article of incorporation. What that does is basically it shows, hey, here's a business, here's legal paperwork that says I have a business, and uh, I'll teach them how to form an LLC, how to get a oh man, I'm blanking on the name of it, but the
The
person
EIN.
EIN. Also, like, since a lot of my students are under the age of 18, they need someone over 18 to sign all their contracts and paperwork for them. So, teaching them how to register a person for that and just basically all the foundations to start a business. Then, after that, I help keep them on track with where they want to go while also teaching them. One of my students who's also my partner in the window washing business, I'm teaching him sales and marketing and just discipline as well. So like I will he would say something like, hey, I want to hang out with my girlfriend later today. Can I have the day off? And I was like, great, you can have the day off to spend time with your girlfriend. Tomorrow though you have to put in double the work to even it out. But here's a lesson that you should learn from this because you want to sacrifice your time now with your girlfriend, knowing that you need to do work later. here's another lesson that can go with it, and like just based on situations that happened. And it's mainly I like to do a reactive sort of teaching. And like a lot of times I'll be proactive as well. Like if they get in legal trouble, then I make sure that I'm proactive and I make sure that they're all right. But it's easier for them to be able to get into like a little bit of mud, have a foot in the mud, and I can pull them out of the mud and be like, hey, just so you know, there's a puddle of mud here. Look at where your shoe is. Here's what this puddle of mud means. Now walk around it. Now that you understand what it means and you felt a little bit of what it should have been if I had not stepped in and helped you.
It's pretty cool. I'm pretty sure I just had like two other questions while you're talking, but there's just a lot to unpack there. I'm sure it'll come back and keep it moving a little
Yeah,
bit. Um,
I'm sorry that I'm speaking
n-
so much. I just want to make sure you
nah,
have the most.
I'm just learning so much there. I was like, wow, I didn't realize how much was involved. But in what ways has your experience in 3D animation and music influenced your creative problem solving?
So it taught me to be able to stick to an idea long term. And of course, I've always been able to stick through things long term, but it was also mainly because, you know, I'd either signed myself up to or forced myself to do this. Like I was, I don't want to say forced, but you know, forced to go to school. I signed up to volunteer, so I was kind of forced to volunteer. Signed up to start a company to help students. So, you know, having that time where it's not an obligation and it's more of just what do I want to do? It's like not only am I able to create an obligation for myself to do stuff, now it's I can look at an idea that I have and want to do it. And even if no one in the world says I need to do it, no one says that I should do it, and no one even asks for me to do it, I can still do it just because I want to. And it's not an obligation, and I can still have fun with it.
Think what you reminded me, the last idea was you were like, you're gonna have to work twice as hard tomorrow. I relate on that one on the gym. Like when I would skip the gym, I'm like, all right, if I'm gonna do that and I made that decision, I need to really compound with like twice as much work tonight for like doing that to my body or like neglecting in some aspect, right? Like how do I multiply this into a crazy positive for even though it's probably not good, like you still gotta find balance. I get that.
Of course. Yeah. No, there always needs to be a balance, but I do agree, like just on a mental discipline wise, like that kind of mindset is really good because it's like if you shouldn't be missing days, but if you do, understanding that you're going to need to do at least twice the work in order to compensate for that, like it does toughen the mind and it does help in just all aspects of life, whether or not it be business or getting a job or doing something that you love doing as a hobby.
And what's also crazy is I had been doing so much research and posting so much work the last like 4 months that I think April was the first month that I didn't really post very much or like I'm just kind of trying to compare the burnout, how easy it is to like just overdo yourself at the same time. Um, what does a typical day look like for you when balancing multiple roles?
So I I look at it just as like a day by day basis. You know, every day to me is completely different, and every day has different needs for me. But you know, I normally wake up at around six. So I'll just for a normal day, I'll take yesterday for an example. So I still go to school, and on top of that, I do all this volunteer work and do all this kind of stuff. So keep that in mind. And after I graduate and I'm like fully done with, I guess, the mandatory school section, since I still am planning on, you know, in the future, I do certificate courses with colleges, and I still plan on doing that. But as for like yesterday, Friday, typical school day, what would normally happen is I wake up at around 6 to 7. Uh, well, 6 to 7. Really, I wake up at 6, and for an hour, like it's mainly me watching YouTube, and I've kind of curated my my recommendations to learning about business, learning about me, basically just teaching myself things.
Nice.
And so I watch those videos for about an hour and I catch up. After that, I have around 30 minutes just to get ready for school. Or on some days, like yesterday, I think, hey, I haven't done exercise in a while. I should probably skate to school since I do rollerblading, which is something no one ever does. And
It's
everyone's like,
funny.
yeah, a kid at my age, no one ever rollerblades my age. But
Love it.
you
I
know,
got rollerblades. I love rollerblading.
you rollerblade too. That's
Hell yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, if we ever meet up, we'll go rollerblading.
I agree. Oh, that's a funny story. I'll get into this later, but I gotta talk about how like my dad, he was in the X Games back, I think in around
Wow.
the year 2000. He
Super
was like
cool.
the 11th best rollerblader in the world. Aggressive rollerblade. Yeah,
Super random. I love it. We're
super
talking
random.
inlines, right? Inlines.
Yeah, inlines.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's cool.
you know, yeah. So you do
Know
know
your
your stuff about rollerblading.
terminology. Yeah, I worked at multiple
That's good.
skating rinks in my life and had to repair skates and stuff. It's funny.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I know. What a weird thing to have in common. But yeah, continue with your story.
Yeah. But oh man, we're okay. Right. So my day. So days like yesterday, I would skate to school and just I've been having a lot to think about recently, just from life, just general life stuff. Nothing like too serious, but just yeah. Then I get to school, and generally, what I'll do is I'll split my school day by the period. It's like it depends on what I need to do most. So for my orchestra class, I did get into an argument with them yesterday, just based on the workload that I do with them, and just the lack of respect that I've gotten. Which, again, like they're kids, they're not going to understand that effort.
I feel you.
But at the same time, uh, I really did do everything I could with the program. I was technically their stage manager, and I would set up the stage. I would do all the lights and sound, uh, you know, all the paperwork that needed to be filled out. Like it got to the point where
All the
I
initiative.
oh yeah, exactly, and like uh, we got into a huge argument, and I do think that it would be good to talk later on. And I have nothing against any of them. It's just that situation need to be addressed because during those performances I've been working basically with everything I have for 2 years for that program, about a dozen concerts, and at almost every time I would go backstage whenever I could, and I would have to vomit because of how much I overworked, and I'd collapse
Damn.
backstage because of
Just things,
overworking and
pure
dehydration.
anxiety, do you think, or no? Combination of everything?
I think it was a combination of everything, just like overworking, anxiety, uh, just a lot of factors that keep compounding, along with like stress of everything. Like when you're backstage, and on top of that, you have to deal with running companies and being like high levels at nonprofits. Like even while I'm backstage, if I'm not doing something right at that second backstage, I'm texting my boss for nonprofits, or I'm helping manage the company, or I'm teaching my students. And like I really
So it's
don't
just like
get
a
even
brain overload at some point, huh?
exactly. And like it's very unhealthy, but at the time, it's like someone has to do it. And I have all the training qualifications that most of the students don't have. So I kind of needed to do it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be safe or it wouldn't be done,
Damn.
which isn't an option. Yeah.
Damn.
But
Let's
that was a
see.
whole, yeah.
How has your cultural background, particularly Japanese influences, shaped your business practices or leadership style?
Ooh.
Are you
So
familiar with the Deming method?
that sounds familiar. Can you remind me what it is, though?
Deming management method. I think his name was Joseph Deming. Um, Basically, it was, long story short, caring about your employees, like actually knowing what drives them and motivates them in the workplaces. It was called the
Yeah.
Deming management, And it's kind of basically caring about your employees, which doesn't exist in America anymore, right? But the idea is to, on a personal level, know what motivates and drives them. Like, what are you lacking? Like, is there a family member that you care about like most or need help with, or something that you're not, a material item? Like, what are your problems in your life? Like, the employers actually care about the people they employ.
Yeah. So, okay, that the name sounded familiar. I was like, wait, I
It's
remember hearing that
It's
somewhere.
also a check process though. So it's like you plan, you do, and then act kind of. There's like a 4-step method between all of it. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So for for me in the leadership roles that I play and like being a teacher, I I do kind of use the Deming method. I don't use a checklist, but I do genuinely care about my employees. So like I'll take an example. Right now, we're looking at in my window washing business, we're looking at hiring one of so my co-founder worked at Fry's, and his manager was one of the sweetest ladies ever, one of the sweetest managers ever. I've gone in and like I've seen her working all the time, and she has done nothing but good for the company. But she got wrongfully terminated and then evicted from her apartment. And so now what we're looking at doing is onboarding her to our company. And unfortunately, she does have to do some of the hard labor just because that's the part where we need the most help in that because we need to make the money to help her. But on top of that, even now, I'm planning. I think it was yesterday. We talked. We have the same biology class, but we were talking. Okay, great. We have all the things that Stella has done. That's her first name, but Stella has done a lot of great things in her time with Fries, but she can't land a job just because of uh, her resume isn't the greatest resume. She isn't the most outspoken. And so it's like we're trying to create a path for her to where if she wishes to work with us for more than this time, then she can. But we're trying to get it to be like, we don't want her to work for a company. We don't want anyone to work for a company for more than they need to or want to. So what we try to do is with Stella, we're making a 4 month plan where it's like, great, for the first month, we're going to make sure that she's getting off drugs, that she's uh, not living in her car, so that way she has a house, so that way her and her kids, who are both in high school and are not able to help out financially, we want to make sure that they're taken care of first within that first month. Then the next 3 months, it's okay, we're going to teach Stella everything she needs to know to land a good job with what she has now. Because unfortunately, she's reached the age to where it's like it is really hard to pivot different roles that she can take. But we can at least teach her enough to be able to land a job and execute it well for future companies. So that way, her and her family don't have to struggle like they are now. And, I take that kind of care and consideration with not just my employees, not just my students, but like everyone, fellow peers, uh, with the volunteers who work under me, with even in theater, with the 100+ people who work in the theater, I try and look at okay, great, where's every person at now, and where do they want to go, and how can I help them get to where they want to go?
Wow.
So yeah,
That's a lot, dude. I'm just like shook at like the amount of work you do for how young you are. Like, it takes a lot of consideration. I don't know what it would inspire somebody that young to do that either, in that aspect. But
I'm not sure.
Deming is plan, do, check, act. It's an approach to process analysis and improvement. Emphasize training and education so everyone can do their jobs better. Pretty interesting. I'm pretty sure it was a Japanese person who created it. But let's keep moving. It's pretty good. I don't know how
Yeah.
much more time you got here, but
Oh,
I
I
got quite
got
a,
all day, so
all right, cool, cool. What's one piece of advice you would give to someone struggling to find their passion or their career path?
I would say look at what your hobbies are. what's the thing that you love spending time doing? And if you want to make it a job, how can you make it financially viable? But if you're looking at just, you know, you want to try and become happier, how can you utilize that? And, you know, it's bad to think of how can I make the most out of my time that I spend on the thing that I love? Because it's like you love doing it. You don't want to overforce the fact that you love doing it. But it's like, how can you enjoy it as much as you can and, you know, be able to find the correct balance of the thing that you love doing and, you know, still facing the real world head on. So like just for example, someone that I look up to, Thor, he created Pirate Software. It's a game studio, and uh, what he did was he was an offensive security specialist for over 2 decades, and he uh, he wanted to start up a game studio since he had worked with Blizzard and Amazon Game Studios. He wanted to create his own game, and he wanted to find his meaning by pursuing a game studio and create a game. And so what he did was he transitioned from where his life is, well, at the time where his life was, he was an offensive security specialist who wanted to make games. So what he did was he transitioned from great, I'm making I'm making money from my job full time, but in my part time, I'll be making this game. And eventually, just because he wanted to monetize the way he was doing it in order to fully commit to making a game, he started building an online brand. And eventually, he became popular enough to where it's obviously a fraction of what he used to get working as an offensive security specialist, but he transitioned from having a job that he may not have. I'm not sure if he really likes the job, but he went from a job that he may or may not have liked to a job that he loves with a passion and loves going to work every day.
Damn, that's a pretty good example of just on your own time, little by little, working on some way to, I don't want to say set you free, because you're already free technically, I guess, if you have the financial aspect of it, right? But freedom of like your own time and to really use your brain however you want all the time, I guess, is another level of freedom.
Yeah, it's definitely something that like I haven't mastered yet, and it takes, at least from what I've seen, it takes almost a lifetime to really get to comprehend and understand. But once that skill is like really learned, that's when a lot of people truly do appreciate life and start really committing to things that they love and backing away from things that they don't.
Wow. How important is it to have a global perspective in business today? How do you cultivate this among your mentees?
So, on a global level, since we're really in the AI age and the digital age, it's important to think globally because depending on what you sell, so Josh is one of my clients. He sells fitness equipment. His aunt over in Turkey, or Turkey as they call it now, they she unfortunately ran out of business and kind of transitioned the business over to Josh, and so now I'm helping him build an online store that can be shipped worldwide. That being said, Josh doesn't know all the cultures around the world, and like it's hard to know all the cultures. I don't know all the cultures, but I'm lucky enough to know enough about the cultures that I need to in order to advertise to each of them. So from a business perspective, it's like knowing each culture helps because you can advertise to a certain group and like make them feel like home when I advertise to them. So like if I for America, it's like I can if I was selling something political, let's say, just because that's something that everyone here in America knows. If I was going political and let's say it was something that Trump supports or Biden supports. It's like I make an ad that basically targets Trump supporters. It's the same concept, but instead of what people support, it's like the lingo of the area that they're in. So uh, instead of if I were McDonald's and I went to Britain and I said, "Hey, try out our new fries," everyone in Britain's gonna be like, "What are fries? They're called chips." So it's like that's one example, but it's like also visual and audio representations of like there's some things that each individual culture has that another one doesn't. And if you incorporate that, then it does make it feel like home and they're more willing to buy.
It's also thinking about how your use is probably figuring out, hey, these countries probably wouldn't care, these ones would. Like there's a lot of nuances, right? Age ranges,
Exactly.
the ones who have money in these countries. Yeah, a lot of breakdowns in data. It's pretty cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's see. How has the role of technology in education changed since you were in school?
So from when I started, technology really wasn't a big thing. Like it was apparent. Like there were smart boards. Uh, Actually, one of my earliest memories that I can think of right now, and I find it really fun, was like uh, it was like at that age. This was back, I think, first second grade, but uh, technology. There was not really any in school, and like the most technologically advanced thing there was the teacher's computer, which was basically a really old box that just sat in the corner. But we would have this smart board and we would calibrate it, and like you'd have to calibrate it using the pen. Nowadays, it's like it's all automatically calibrated. Like if you really need to calibrate it, then like you call a maintenance guy down because it is complex to calibrate it now. Before it's
Wow.
just a button and then you calibrate it, you press the little dots up in the corners. But now it's like you need an actual technician on standby because it breaks down so little that when it does, it's a big deal.
Interesting. That's a good point.
So
Okay.
yeah, and like also the access of technology. When I was first starting off in school, I didn't even know computers for students were a thing. Like you can get a computer as a student,
Yeah.
but nowadays it's like I have three school issued laptops. It's like technology has it there's been such an investment into technology, which I think is a good thing to do. But at the same time, I feel like the way they're doing it may not be the best just because of like how dependent we are on it now.
That's
So
true. I mean, I
yeah.
got like four screens around me right now. I'm like, jeez, we are
Yeah,
spoiled.
even exactly. I have like you, I have a drawing tablet here. I have two monitors. Like
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
on top
funny,
of that,
dude.
my phone. It's like it's
Yeah.
just
Can you explain a difficult concept in sales or marketing that you teach and how to simplify it for beginners?
ooh. So I guess this isn't really a complex or I guess too hard topic, but it's one that I guess a lot of people don't understand. And it's it's mainly used I think this will be useful to a lot of people here who haven't started doing anything. And it's just learning to give value first. And most of sales and marketing, what people think it is and a lot of it is this, but it's how can we get in someone's head and be like, okay, this is what they're thinking. How can we show them that our product helps them in that way? And how can we get them from point A to point B to point C, go
Wow.
through this whole
I feel like
funnel?
girls are so much better than guys at that. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, they definitely are. Girls are so much better at that. But yeah, most people are like, that's what happens. But
Yeah, the whole foreseeing the future and plotting and making it happen, right? Like it's hilarious.
exactly. Yeah, girls are way too good at that. I don't know how. Like I'm decent at it, but girls they
Yeah.
take it to another level.
Yeah, they set up the future and everything. Yeah. That's funny.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm not even sure
But
if you answered that. My bad. I didn't mean to cut you off on that.
Yeah, no worries. I can still, I'll still answer it. But like most people think marketing and sales is just that. But one of the core things that marketing and sales is showing people that your product is good. And most people don't really think of that now. Um, so one of the things that I'm trying to drive home with another one of my students now is he wants to basically be like an almost advertising agency to where he helps advertise products for other companies and help build their brand, as I am right now with my students. But uh, and of course, I'm not going to say no to him because if I help him, then he gets to help other people, which is a great thing. That's what I want to happen. But
You're not competitive, is what you're saying.
exactly, I'm competitive. I still want to be better than him,
For sure.
but it's like it's a mutual benefit kind of thing. I want him to want to be better than me, as I want to be better than him. So that way we compete and we both elevate our game.
And also, would you argue you're not in the same like genre either? You're not really competing for each other's like clients or work, so that's also a motivator.
Do you mean that by like I don't really care as like getting clients,
Yeah,
like more clients?
not like between you and him. It's like it's not competitive in that aspect. Like you're kind of competing for different markets, different people. So there's no competition in that aspect.
Yeah, for me, although I do help uh help build personal brands and stuff, although I really want to very, very soon go into a whole bunch of different markets, like helping uh, possibly like music creators. How can I help them get more gigs and build their brands? And I'm very business oriented, which uh, does help me in some situations, but I want to try and get a general perspective from every perspective. But from strictly a business perspective, I I'm helping the youth right now since I know getting their success, it'll look, this puts me at my own benefit, but I want to make it clear that I'm doing this. Of course, I get benefit from it, but I'm also trying to help other people with it. So if I help the youth become really successful, then what they do is they're like, yeah, this is all great. This was Ken was my teacher. They might not say it, but like one or two might say that I helped. And from there, someone will reach out to me and be like, hey, can you help me? And from there, it's like my name gets out there more and more, and I can help more and more people. And, in different age ranges, in different industries, and, helping people through that. But to answer your original question of like a hard concept in sales and marketing, it's really putting your work first and showing what you can do. So with a lot of volunteer stuff that I do and like I onboard people, it's like I tell them that it's great that they're volunteering because they're proving their skill first, even if they don't have like any skills that they acknowledge they have. No matter what you do, your life before now all adds up to a story that you can use in anything that you do. Um, so if you use all that story into doing something that you want to, you can learn how to build off what you already know and expand on that. And you might be learning a lot now, but you're providing value now by doing work for free. And that's a concept a lot of business owners don't think. And they think, how can I get paid now? How can I get paid now? Um, with my business partner, for him, it's like I need to get paid because just we recently a couple months ago we got into a head-to-head 50-mile-an-hour car crash head on, and like he needs to pay off his uh his car so that way he can still do stuff. And he's had insurance, but he still needs to pay for insurance, stuff like that,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Life.
life things.
Yeah.
But outside of that, he takes the minimal, even though he needs to be paid. He takes the minimal because we're trying to provide value for our customers by being able to cut our prices so much. And we, of course, still keep as high of quality as we can as the industry standard, and we try to go beyond that. But at the same time, we need to get paid for our employees who are homeless who need the work in order to get back up on their feet. But being able to provide value at as little cost or at no cost, that is something that is one of the biggest marketing tactics. One the book that I'm writing now, of course, I have to charge for a physical copy of the book. I just have to. I'm not going to lose thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars when I make barely any money, if any money at all, because I just want to give out the book for free. But as for like digital and audio versions of the book, I'll just give that out for free because I want to provide that kind of value to an audience.
Damn.
And
Even
yeah,
even though it means that much to you, that's crazy. That's cool.
exactly. Yeah. And like as much as the book itself means to me, and like should I charge for the book, even the digital and audio version?
It's
Of
all your
course.
experiences. Yeah.
Exactly. I've rewritten this book 9 times.
Damn.
I've spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours on it. No, not hundreds. I've definitely spent thousands of hours on this book. And like,
How long is it?
it's about 200 pages, including like, uh, for me, I hate reading books that are just words and words and like, it's all just and I want to make sure the audience can still be engaged. I want to make sure that even if you have a short attention span, you can still read the book, and like even if you still need to take a break from it, you can still look at the pictures and be like, oh, I can comprehend that. That's a visual that really
Feel
puts
free
into
to
perspective.
advertise that. Feel free to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, and it really is a lot of what I've talked about here on this podcast, and it's just like all the experiences that I have, but it's all kind of put in a format to where it's like I want to emphasize all the mistakes that I had, and like I feel like the overall story is like I guess I want to promote the fact that of course this is kind of a quote unquote autobiography of everything up to this point for me, but
What's the name of it?
over so the name I still want to play around with different. I'm like at 3 weeks from launching this book, which is
Nice.
weird to say. I'm still debating on the title,
Well,
but
dude, you know what? Whenever it comes out, I'll drop this with it. So let me know so I can give you some max exposure. Let me know.
are you sure? I know you
Yeah,
said
for
that
sure.
you like
Just,
to.
just let me know. Yeah. Like
Awesome.
give me a hard date and I'll help you out.
Yeah, and I don't have a specific. I know it's 3 weeks out.
Yeah. Just after.
So yeah, the title of it right now that like I think I'm gonna be dead set on is teen success from nothing to something.
Wow. I like it.
That may not be the best title, but like that I think that that's something that of course, am I a success in every standard? Obviously not. But in the standards that I set of like,
Bro, if you're so young and you've done a lot, come on. Like I think you've done a
exactly,
lot for your age.
yeah, just in comparison to, I don't want to put others down, but in comparison to what a lot of people do my age, I
Yeah.
have done more than what other people do. So, I would like to consider that a success that I've gone ahead of 99% of people. But with that, with the book, I want to, expressly show that, like, hey, I'm okay with the fact that I made so many mistakes. But with that, I want to teach everyone the mistakes that I made as well, and how each person, no matter the age, even if you're a kid, if you're not even a teen yet, or if you are a teen, or if you're an adult, or if you're even 100 years old, like you can still benefit from this book. At least I really want to try and emphasize that. And I think every age can uh, get value from this book, even though this is targeted towards people under 30. I still want to provide value to everyone if I can.
Th-
So,
this
yeah.
question right here might be a little over your head, but I'm curious how you can integrate psychological theories, or if you do, into any of your sales or marketing.
So that is so I do use a lot of psychological tactics in just everyday life. Um, and a lot of it is really just me learning things, and it's just I I look at all the information that I get every day, and I try to attach it to one of my core values, and like this might help later on with this core value, and it to me it helps stick better. But with psychological with how I use psychological uh, how do I say this? Just ways of using psychology every day in business. What I'll do is like it goes the same with everything, but I like to try and go door to door. I try to go meet in person with businesses because no other business does that. Again, it's all digital. But if I go in person, they're like, wow, he's really taking his time out of his day to come meet with us. He's doing
So
more than the
funny.
bare minimum.
Yeah, that's funny
Yeah,
how that's gone back to the basics.
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, to them, it's like, it means a lot. But at the same time, while I'm there, it's like, I also look at, uh, you know, at what points are they excited to be with me and looking at the deal that we could make. And if they're disappointed in it, I'm like, okay, great. Now that I understand it, and this is a sales tactic as well. But I I can, just because I myself have been born and grown up in situations to where I have to be more aware of each person's mentality and mental strengths and disadvantages. I can read people pretty easily. Well, in consideration of my age, I can read people very easily and, understand all that and understand the psychological meanings behind each and every action they do. Even something as simple as, looking away from someone when I'm talking just to make sure that they don't feel intimidated. Those very, like, not something most people talk about, but those basic skills I've just had to learn throughout my life. But in business terms, like I would look at what my potential clients are feeling, and if they feel disappointed with something I said, it's like, oh wow, I'm sorry, I must have said something that you might not have liked. Can you tell me what it is? So possibly we can change that so that way it works best for both worlds. And it's one of those things where is it a psychological tactic of them thinking that I want to help them? Yes. But at the same time, I do genuinely want to help them, because if I don't help them, then there's no use in me trying to do any of this, because if I don't help them, I don't get really any long-term reward from it.
I see what you're saying though, because you're kind of getting at psychology is more about help me help you in that aspect, right? Like I'm learning this to be able to communicate, and in the end, you're only going to benefit from it. So that makes sense.
Exactly.
I can see how
I like,
also people probably use it nefariously, right? If they're trying to coerce people or something, I can get that.
yeah. I mean, I like to think of it as well as like, so I learned this from just being in economy, and I'm not sure entirely how much of your audience knows a lot of this, like minute situations, but there's a dilemma called the prisoner's dilemma, and I like to almost look at life like that, where it's like there's a situation where there's two people who are going to jail. If neither of them snitch, then they both get 5 years in jail. If both of them snitch, then they both get 30 years in jail. If one snitches, then the person who snitches gets zero time. The other person gets 30 years. It's like for both worlds, it is best to not say anything. And that's what I feel like I want to like almost exemplify. Not like not snitch on other people, but like in the prisoner's dilemma, it's not snitching, but in the way that I do everything that I do, it's I'm going to give you everything that I can because I know no matter what, I mean, if I were to snitch on you, then I ruin a lot of my reputation, even if that's like outside the prisoner's dilemma. It's like every action you take still has an impact. And so, if you keep building up goodwill and you keep providing value and you never snitch on the other person and you keep giving, eventually what'll happen is, for 99% of people, 99% of people will snitch and never give you anything back. But for the 1% of people who do, they're also givers and they keep giving. And eventually, you get the two people will find each other and will just give each other things no matter what. And it'll be compound and it'll help grow each other's skill sets. And yeah,
It's funny though, because you say the word snitch, but in reality, the answer is to keep your mouth shut? Question mark. You know what I
kind
mean?
of.
And then
Yeah.
because I'm also thinking like, does that have influence from your Japanese background there? Like, because they know when to speak, right? They're not really just as impulsive as the American society is. We're extremely impulsive over here, dude.
Yeah, I have gotten a little bit of that from here, but I do suppose that that does come from Japan as well. I'm just I guess it goes back to the culture of I don't want help, I just want to give help. But it's like, yeah, they are very reserved in their speech, and so they know when to act, and they understand the point of just giving without getting anything in return. Because I mean, subconsciously, even if no one talks about it, and like most people never think about it, and I have brought this up with a couple of my friends in Japan, and they were like, "Oh wow, I this has always been true, but I never thought about it this way," which is like the prisoner's dilemma. They're like, I never realized that. Yeah, I knew I could get benefit from just helping people, but I never thought that I would get benefit from people. I just thought I was helping people.
Yeah, and dude, if that's not the best karma, I don't know what is. But trying to relate to you on that aspect, I'm trying to do work in Tanzania, and basically there it's a long story. So it has to do with like 500 to 1500 acres on we're trying to grow rice, and it's a lot of work. But my point is, when they first reached out to me through USAID, contacted my nonprofit, I did some research on the country and I was like, oh, they have their first woman president. I was like super amazed by that. And then how her husband's like super into agriculture. So I'm trying to put together like, okay, the government cares about their people. It's third world. You start studying relationships between America, like their perception on the country, maybe past trade. So you get a little into the history and stuff. And then I was like, oh, they have this gem that's called tanzanite, and it only exists because I guess the equator is something under where mountains meet, and this gem is only produced in their country in that area of the world. So I got super fascinated, went down this rabbit hole, did a bunch of research on it, and it's called a generational gem because it's going to go extinct within our lifetime, like the way that they're pillaging and just taking it and stealing it from the mine. Yeah, so tanzanite, they sell it very cheaply online even though it's very rare, right? And so my point is, I made this super long research document on how they can preserve it. I mailed it across the world to their government, and I was like, "Look, I don't expect anything, but just like you're saying, I was like, if you want to preserve it, then here's how you reward honesty and people won't steal." And I even included images of how to like build a compound around the mine, like controlling the people
Wow.
stealing. And yeah, I went very into detail on the whole history of it. And my point being, the reason I'm telling you this is because I see what you're doing, and I'm like, if you need some research for what you're working on, let me know. Like, I don't have a problem dedicating some worker time to what you're working on because I can see the need, whether it's in Sudan or wherever you're working. But I'm giving you an example of how I can help you with my research and stuff.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I
Yeah.
I found it really funny when you said like preserving Tanzanite in Tanzania, and of course this is a completely more common I guess, gem, which is gold. But like with South Sudan, like knowing a little bit more of the gold industry, I was like, oh wow, I didn't even think that tanzanite was that rare because of how cheap it is.
Yeah,
And so like even even just like helping out people in that respect, and like that of course while you might get something in return, it's like you're doing it with the expectation of not getting anything, and
correct.
that itself is like that
Yeah,
is something that is really
the
valuable. And
the best case that could come out of it is I was like, hey, maybe they'll like me and want to meet me or like help me out with the project that I'm already trying to help in their country. But they're more of they delegate to people that are like, hey, you find the investors and stuff like that. Like the government's not as involved, but I'm sure they are in different countries. It depends on the resources and what they have.
yeah, it all depends on just who the officials are and what their goals are.
Also, Africa's huge, right? Like every country, if you look on the map, you don't even know how big it really is in comparison.
Yeah,
It's
it
funny.
is huge.
Yeah, I hope to go there one day, but uh I'm tying that in. This is another project I'm working on. I'm trying to tie that sustainable farming initiative into a project into Texas where I'm trying to build a sustainable stadium where I want to make it like a living laboratory. It's not just for entertainment. Like I want to do research and experiments. So I've been meeting with professors trying to discuss how to get land grants and stuff so I can build it. And it's a long and complicated process because the city that I'm working with is talking about donating the land. The architectural firm who built my college's uh, campus is talking about building it for free, the actual blueprint. So I'm over here just thinking like, okay, if I can get investors, now I just got to go do all the legwork, all the groundwork. And honestly, 30 million is not that bad in the grand scheme of things. It's
Oh
really not that
wow.
much money. And then when you consider how small this town is, though, it's like, dude, like, can you imagine if you're bringing a giant project to any small town? Like, it changes everything. Like, it changes the local economy, the way people live, property values. Like, there's a lot of things we don't account for by trying to make changes in these countries or cities.
Yeah, it's like indirect consequences. Well, I guess consequences, but both
Indirect
positive and
benefits.
negative.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's a good way to put
and
it.
yeah, that's really cool that you're doing that too. I can, if you want to, I have a friend. Her name's Isabella, and she's actually looking at uh, not necessarily the same thing, but she's really getting into uh, opening trades with America and Mexico for agriculture. And while this may not be the exact same thing, she does really want to help out in any way she can. And that might be something that you might be
Hell yeah.
interested in talking with her about that.
Hell yeah. Global food supply stuff is becoming more important too. But yeah, just trade between countries, right? Like that was another big one is if I open up trade between a country and a small little county in Texas, it's like unheard of. Like
Yeah.
doing trade, yeah, it's crazy.
So,
What's the most effective way you found to inspire creativity in others, especially structured environments like maybe classrooms or maybe your remote.
hmm. um, sorry, I my headphones were turn them in.
It's all good. Ways that you found to inspire
And
creativity.
sorry about that. Hold
Nah,
on.
we chilling.
Sorry.
I'll mark this clip. We'll cut it. Don't worry about it.
Hold on. Sorry about
Two.
this. Um,
All good.
all right, there we go.
I marked it. I'll cut that part. Let me reword it. I'm gonna ask you again. What's
Okay.
the what's
Hold
the
on.
most? Okay.
So I just want to make sure that, like, if possible, because my headphones are about to die, I just want to make sure that, yeah.
Test test.
Here we
Just let me
go.
know. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. What's the most effective way you found to inspire creativity in others, especially in a structured environment? Maybe like a classroom or remotely. How do you make it work?
Ooh, so I mean, in the way that I do things, it's very non-traditional and it's very um I try to make sure that each individual's needs are met, but really it's just like I want to try and be a good caring teacher in person and just see uh, what do what does each person need, where do they want to go, and how can I help teach them that what's going on may help them, and that they may want to learn this, maybe not because they need to, but because it may help them in what they want to do. And so like it's almost like the same thinking that I have. Like I'm bored in math class all the time, and I hate learning math. But at the same time, it's like, even though I might not use pre-calculus, which is the class I'm in right now, I might not use it. But we're learning about uh, statistics right now in that pre-calc class, which is weird because it's a pre-calc class, not statistics.
Yeah.
But uh, even though I know the basics of statistics already, it's like it's good to have that refresher of knowing what statistics is, because I could use that refresher because I'm still doing business, and even though I'm getting into all these complex situations, knowing the basics is still important, and teaching that kind of a thinking to other students and helping build the environment to support that thinking is really important, and something that I try to do every time with everyone.
It's pretty good. I like that answer. How do you foresee the future of trade-based labor evolving? How are you preparing your students for these changes?
So I think so. I had a conversation with this with my dad. My dad, he's also an incredibly exceptional person. Like I said before, 11th in the world rollerblading. Uh, he came from Buffalo, New York. He was in a much worse situation than me. Nothing like drugs or anything like that, but just like he was in a bad. Uh, it was like he would not grow if he didn't change his life significantly, which he did by joining the Marines. And now he's director of operations at a $20 million company where he basically runs all the operations of making bill acceptors. And like his story is incredible too. But me and him were having a conversation about this, and I was contemplating, is college really worth going? Because from what I've seen, trade-based labor is really coming into play, and like with that comes in the thought of, it doesn't matter if you have the certifications for it, for trade-based labor. It's more or less, do you have the skill to do it? And we had a conversation, and he told me that within the next 12 to 15 years that college will be diminished to a point for trade-based labor that um college won't be worth it. But at the same time, like the skills that you learn for trade-based labor is really important for the next 12, 15 years, because at that point it's like it will be one of the leading industries in not just America but all over the world. And being able to prepare for that, I teach my students how to. Well, first off, my students are getting the benefits either way because they're getting the experience. Maybe not like in the industry that they might be in 12, 15 years from now, but just overall experience and understanding how to take their past experience and take it to different industries. It's like if they are helping run a brand and for gym equipment and selling gym equipment, great. How can you transition and use what you learned from gym equipment? And let's say in 5, 10 years, you want to get into working for banks. Two very different fields, but basically trying to help them build their story to be able to transition to going to a bank and working for a bank from selling gym equipment. Yeah.
That's a good comparison. I like it. What psychological traits specifically do you think are most beneficial for a leader? How can they be developed?
For a leader,
Yeah.
I think the most important skill, which unfortunately most managers and leaders don't ever really express enough, is the trait of being I mixed the two of these up, but either empathetic or sympathetic. The one where I believe it's empathetic, where you understand
Yeah.
how they're feeling, but not
Yeah.
having to feel the same thing.
Yeah.
Um, that's a huge trait that a lot of leaders they might say they have, but
It's
really, I
true.
guess it's like understanding that,
Became a gimmicky thing, huh?
yeah, and like it's like something that every leader now says they have. But, I'm not any different. I say that I have empathy, but possibly it's just because I don't see the full picture. And, I might be completely messing up one or two of my students because, like, I don't understand the full picture. And, like, I completely take full accountability for that if I am doing that. But it's just
But
like,
but I also think one of the signs that you have empathy is to know that you could be messing up, right? Most people don't even want to acknowledge that they could be wrong at anything.
exactly. And, like, that goes in with our culture today too, of just like we don't want to show our mistakes because there are mistakes. You want to show the best of us, or the best of who each of us are.
Yeah, I think
And
that's an insecurity thing, right? Because then we're like, or they somebody won't like me, whatever. Insert the reason why.
exactly. And then that's also just all around the world. Same goes with Japan, and it might be one of the factors of why they give without asking for help. And it's just like one of those things where it makes you look worse. What most people think is that it makes each person look worse, when in all reality, it's like
It's
it's
actually
okay to
relatable.
make yeah,
Yeah, it's actually relatable. You would be surprised how many people are feeling the same thing or going through the same thing.
exactly. It's like most people don't think of that and they think everyone's gonna hate me if I make these mistakes. I've been in that situation where it's like, wow, I'm making way too many mistakes. Even recently, it's like I'm making way too many mistakes. And like even though I'll still talk about them, it's like even deep inside, I want to talk about it, but at the same time, I am very embarrassed talking about my mistakes because it's like my mistakes don't define me, but at the same time, it's like it is part of who I am, the mistakes that I make. It's like finding that balance of I shouldn't feel embarrassed for learning from my mistakes, but at the same time, I need to learn to feel embarrassed from my mistakes, so I try to not make the same mistakes.
That's also a way you communicate intelligence, though, because if you're talking to somebody who's super experienced in some profession and you tell them what mistake you made, then they're like, well, now I know that you won't make that again, or that you're beyond this level of understanding, right? So it's also a
Yeah.
good way to grasp where somebody's at in their level of, I don't know, understanding some subject or topic, for example.
Yeah, it's a really good indicator because once you learn like the mistakes that they've made, then it's just like great. Not only do you have a good amount of emotional intelligence, because that really does take a lot of emotional control to be able to do that, but also, like you said, just the knowledge of that field that you're talking about.
It's a good point. Yeah, no, I feel like that even with, ruining maybe any past relationship or something in my life where I'm like, I should have cultivated that better, stayed in touch or something. I can immediately think of that as a reference point. In
Yeah.
what ways do you think business education for young people needs to change to better prepare them for the future?
For business education, you said?
Yeah, to prepare young people.
So this is obviously me being like in a dream world in
Yeah, yeah,
the
of
best
course.
circumstance.
That's where
Yeah,
I live. I live there.
nice. But best case scenario, I would love for there to be like uh of course public schooling up to about like fifth grade because I've done a lot of research and I see that most adults, which is unfortunate but understandable just from how the education system is, most people only have up to a fifth grade level education by the time that they're 30. Not like the fact that they don't have a high school diploma, but the amount of knowledge that they retain is about fifth grade level. So I believe that, public schooling maybe change the way public schooling is now a little bit, but Same
A little
general
bit, just a
concept,
little bit, just a little bit.
just a little bit. But like that same concept of like everyone kind of goes to the same school to learn the foundations, and then like at that point everyone will start to see maybe not what job they want to have, but maybe like what they like doing, and then having their own individual school with that. So for in terms of business, like possibly have a business school, like a business middle school, and it's not like a
That's a
thing
good
where it's
one.
like,
I like that one.
yeah. So it's like, and it will teach all about business, and of course like other things that students need to learn, but with specifications in business and teaching things like sales psychology, but also also important skills like in business. It really is hard to have mental strength in it, and like it's like what a lot of people see that I do are the big headlines that I do, but what no one sees and that I never show, just because like I don't want to show it just because everyone's gonna be like, oh wow, look at all the work he's doing, and I don't want to get praised for, of course I want to get praised for the work that I do, but at the same time my goal
You're
is
not
to
doing
teach.
you're not doing it for the praise.
Exactly. But
Got
like
you.
but behind the scenes every day I get rejected at least 1,000 times,
Same, dude.
right?
Same. Yeah, same.
So it's like you have to deal with 1,000 rejections before you get one. It's like having schools
But those
like,
ones are huge, though. Those one little wins are
yeah,
huge.
that
Super
one
exciting.
little win,
Yeah.
it makes up and exceeds all those 1,000 other things that you would have done.
Super agree on that one. Very relatable. Can you share any techniques or strategies that have consistently helped you overcome challenges?
So one that is really hard is being able to accept the blame even if it's not your fault.
Damn.
So yeah, it's not
Is it
that it
is it for
is
the
your
sake of moving on? Is that what it is?
kind of, but it's also like it's another thing where it's like, how can I learn from this experience? So like I just moved on from one of my best friends because I'm moving soon, and just there is a whole bunch of things that have happened recently, and just overall we're not great together, and like we still might talk later on, but just uh even though it may not have been my fault and it may have been the fault of others, which uh of course like some of it is my fault, but it's not entirely my fault, but I take full blame and accountability for the fact that I lost my best friend because, well, I, even though uh, I, it wasn't completely my fault, I could have done things differently. What
Oh
could
my
I have
god.
done
I
differently?
relate too much to you in this damn podcast, dude. I'm so sick of it. You're like telling my story so many times, but continue,
Calling you
continue.
out.
Yeah.
But yes,
I've had the same feelings.
yeah, and a lot of people go through maybe not the exact same thing, but like the same general concept of like, I know it's like to lose someone, and like it may not have been your fault, but you need to understand that you may have been able to do things differently. Take accountability for that, but again, it's like you can't really do anything. It's best to move on.
It's so funny because today my nephew, all he had to do was hold the ball at home plate for baseball, and he threw it to third base, and that runner came home, and they lost the game on that one. And I was just thinking to myself, like, man, he's gonna be thinking all I had to do, that one decision of impulse of like, you know what, I don't even have to do anything, just stand here with the ball.
Yeah,
Totally different change of path decisions.
yeah, no, but and with stuff like that, I feel like it's also important to also say like it is good to give yourself the benefit of the doubt. Like for your nephew, possibly it was just the best. It probably was if he
Decision,
did it.
yeah,
It was the best
yeah,
decision with what he knew.
yeah.
And sometimes it is just like that. And like even in business, and even with me losing my best friend, it wasn't like a thing that was I
Think it's a
should have
timing?
done.
You think it's a timing thing?
It may have been. It may have just. It was just a combination of just like I focus so much on so many different things, and while it's not okay for anyone to do this, and I'm constantly trying to fix this, but the lack of self-respect, I guess, in like taking care of myself in that way. So like uh for me, I've learned that uh I work best when I work best in the short term.
Putting yourself first.
Yeah. I work best when I put myself down in the short term, but at the same time in the long term, I've been doing this for 5 years where I put myself down and like, wow, I'm really starting to see the negative effects of that. And that came off and I tried communicating that, but even with me trying to be uh as mindful as possible, I do make a ton of mistakes and I didn't take my friends' feelings into consideration. And with that, even though I did sign up for a lot of it, some of the stuff I didn't sign up for it, and with how I treat myself, sure, yes, it may not have been entirely my fault in just situations I've been put in and I put myself in without the knowledge of what would happen. It still does happen, and at the time, and like even right now, the best decision might be waiting until I move so that way I have a new environment. So that way, I can because I
Different
condition myself.
perspective.
Yep. And it's just a different perspective and basically a breath of fresh air that I can take on and then be able to understand everything in a more full picture, so to say.
Yeah, my situation was more of I shouldn't have said anything, or I tried to warn somebody of something that may have happened, but my big lesson was just mind your business, pretty much, you know? Like
Yeah.
sometimes it's better for people to find out on their own, or maybe you don't have to be the person to save the day in every situation. I was just like, well, that was what I took from it, I guess.
Yeah. I guess fortunate and unfortunate enough to not have had that situation yet, where it's like, you know, well, kind of, with the strings program where we argued about the fact that I had almost died backstage just from all the
Yeah,
work. Um, yeah, which again is still ridiculous that I still somehow managed to do that for 2 years. But um, with with in regards of like keeping my mouth shut, it's more or less just I've done a lot and I haven't really had the backlash of maybe I shouldn't have done it. But at the same time, I do think that I've almost quote unquote learned the lesson early on. And I try to make very, very calculated decisions on serious situations. But that being said, that doesn't really work with the last story of my best friend. That one, I think I just completely I
yeah.
didn't know how to handle myself because I've always been able to handle with other people's stresses, but for myself, it was always putting myself down and like my problems aren't as big as other people's problems, kind of thing. So that was a new experience. So I guess that almost was kind of like the same situation with you with thinking I should have kept my mouth shut.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny, yeah. And in the end though, you were just trying to help the other person. Like you really weren't. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Can, can you describe a pivotal moment in your upbringing that significantly shaped your career path?
Hmm. So I think this is a really funny story, and this kind of got me into thinking about business. Um, Back in fourth grade, was it? Yeah, it was fourth grade. I'd moved from Arizona to San Diego, and I had just started new school. Again, it was start over. Knew no one. I had no contact with anyone from my previous school because I had no technology at the time. And it was just like again a fresh start. But I met this kid. Uh, his name's Thomas. Thomas, even to this day, we haven't spoken in a while, but I know that he's still one of the smartest people or smartest kids I've ever met. And at the time, he did it just as a joke, but he still made like $100, $200 off of this. And he asked me to help because he saw that, I was a new kid and he wanted to be friends with me, see who I was. He was like, "Hey, I run a sticker business where I sell stickers of these dumb little icons of potatoes." It was like the dumbest thing, but like he would sell it to everyone in the school, and he was
Oh
really
wow.
popular because not just because of the stickers, he was obviously a really funny, upstanding dude, but like that that moment of like, hey, maybe I might be something like that, where like I could foster a great community because he basically built the community around him. Not like he was the center stage of it, but like he built that community and was helping everyone smile and laugh. And at a time to where, you know, uh, in this section of San Diego, the kids weren't necessarily the nicest, and uh, this was also a time where I was extremely sad and disappointed because I had come from a previous school that had the highest academic standards. Everyone was really nice, really respectful, and to put this in perspective, you know, the school system at that time and the school that I went to, that school motivated me to. I was the number one test scorer in all of Arizona for all of third grade when it came to the math section. So I was the smartest math student in all of third grade. That's how motivated I was and how great the community was. And moving to a community to where it wasn't that supportive and it was not uh something that was like they were bullying, but they weren't supportive of almost anything. That change and dynamic, seeing that he had fostered a community that was supportive, that did uh try to go for mutual gain, so where he got financial gain and a community to be around. The rest of the people around him got uh they had to spend money to get the potato stickers, but like they were, even if they didn't, they were still a part of the community, and so they still benefited from the community. And so it's like that's where I really, even though I didn't know it was basically game theory at the time, that's where I first learned the concept of game theory, and where it really put into perspective of just giving and understanding how business really is on a fundamental level.
Damn, that was quite the spiel. I guess
Yeah,
a
that was a
couple.
lot.
No, that's really good though. I think you have a really good business acumen. You have an understanding. Um, my last question is really what it means for you to be more than rich.
So I define rich by having a lot of money. And obviously, I'm a student, I'm giving away things for free. I am not rich by any standard, but I would like to think that I'm wealthy. And that's the more important distinction. And that rich is financially, you're in a great place. But being wealthy means that you have a greater understanding of yourself and your own self worth and your pride and your understanding of the world. And being more than rich means being wealthy. Because if you only strive to be rich and if you're only rich, then you never get to experience what life is really like. And you only hide behind a facade, which most of the time is hiding behind the fact that you only go for material gain rather than true meaning. And that is what it means to me to be more than rich. To be,
That's
yeah.
damn, damn. That's one of my favorite explanations. Anything you want to promote, just like your book and website information, how to find you.
Yeah. So you can follow me on Instagram. I don't post too much on Instagram, but Kentarou_S. You can find me on LinkedIn. Uh, our links can be in here, or should I say that? Okay, so
Yeah,
yeah.
I got them in the description just below. Yeah, we got you.
So the links will be in the description below. If anyone wants to buy a physical copy of the book, I'm setting it to as low as I can. I'm working with Barnes and Noble on this, and hopefully I can get retail space in the stores. So if you go to Barnes and Noble and you see a book by uh, Kentarou Sajek, or go in, and you don't even have to buy the book, but just check it out. And you know, you can always download the digital or audio version that I'm going to be making here very shortly. And I'm sure that once this podcast comes out, it'll also be out, and links will be there. If you want it for completely free, please take it for completely free. Uh, I want to make sure that you guys have the best way of learning from me. So rewatch this podcast, download this podcast as well. I'm spread the word for this, because I know Joe is an amazing podcaster. This interview has been amazing, and I want you to get as much support as possible as well.
Dope, man. Hell yeah. Got a lot on this. Think you're way further ahead than most people and super impressive for your age, dude. So I hope we work together. So I'll definitely send you some work after this and hopefully we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, I extremely hope so as well. Let's do it.
Got you, bro. All right, I'll let you know when this is out. More Than Rich podcast. We are out.